Well, here we are at the home of Eureka Design with the proprietor, Mick.
Hello Elizabeth. Hello everybody.
We're so delighted to be here because Mick is such a friend and supporter of Evesham Abbey Trust. Mick has done all the branding, and so Mick, would you like to tell us how you became involved with Evesham Abbey?
Yeah, I mean, originally when I first came down to Evesham, I had no idea about the history of the place. Then I started looking around and it was, wow, there's some really fantastic buildings here. I wonder what these all are about. So I started investigating and I found out that the Abbey was the third largest Abbey in the country. I'd never heard of it. And then looking around at the other parts of the history of the Evesham, there was a massive battle here in Evesham, and it was all centred around this huge abbey, which unfortunately mainly got pulled down in the dissolution by Henry VIII. But now Elizabeth and the team are reinventing that story, and I'm hoping to be able to tell it using the digital mediums that we're getting quite well known for these days.
Well, it does help bring history to life for the young people today, Mick, doesn't it?
Certainly does. I mean, everybody knows that that if you're under the age of 30, you consume information on one of these things rather than on a laptop or a newspaper or even on the TV. So to be able to generate interesting information and digital excitement by use of a mobile phone is the way forward for any sort of historic project.
I'm not surprised that Mick didn't know that Evesham Abbey or the ruins of Evesham Abbey actually existed, because the site itself has been in the ownership of the Rudge family for over 300 years. They kindly have given it to the trustees of the site, and we have to do three things. We have to explore the site archaeologically and find out if there are any interesting things underneath the soil. We have to repair and renovate the ruined walls, and then we have to design an interpretive garden and give it over to you, the people who are going to look after the heritage of the town from now on. So it's really great to bring the whole history of Evesham to life, and we're delighted that Mick here is able to do that. Mick, do you want to tell us about the Battle of Evesham?
Okay, so the Battle of Evesham was held in 1265 on the 4th of August, and basically the King of England was very unpopular at the time, and a guy called Simon de Montfort, he raised an army of 5,000 barons and their foot soldiers, went down to London, sacked London, chased the king to Lewes, at the Battle of Lewes, captured the king and then brought him over to Evesham as a hostage. The king's son wasn't having any of that, and he actually brought an army of 10,000 men down from Ludlow and came down, killed all of the Simon de Montfort's men and slaughtered all of the barons and rescued his dad. But the concept of what Simon de Montfort had done was create a parliament of barons exists today. So it's an incredible pivotal point in English history and world politics, and it was the biggest shift in land power since the Battle of Hastings in 1066, and it still resonates. This is a story that's got to be told, and we are going to do it via holding festivals and markets on the Abbey grounds and around the area where most of the men died, unfortunately. But once the Abbey has been restored and the gardens created, we'll be able to utilise that area to hold reenactments and living history camps to be able to tell the story of medieval life, and that's what we're planning on doing. Also, you might not know, Elizabeth, but we're also going to develop a 3D model of what we think the Abbey looked like, and you'll be able to stand inside the Abbey, hold your phone up and see the inside of the Abbey as we think it should have looked. And that's going to be really exciting.
Oh,
it's going to be a world's first, and we like doing those.
Oh, absolutely. Put Evesham well and truly on the map again.
Again, yes.
Fabulous. Yes, it's I guess that Simon de Montfort's story didn't really start until 1218, did it? And that was when his father was killed. He was fighting in Toulouse and he was killed. And Simon de Montfort came with his elder brother, Amaury, and they went to Henry III and they said, please, will you restore to us our father's lands and titles? And the king actually gave the lands and titles in France to Amaury, and to Simon he gave the 6th Earl of Leicester. And so Simon, who had been fighting in the Crusades, was quite a skilled tactician, and he was quite good at fighting. And the king and he got quite friendly. And Simon had his earlship and he had his title, but he'd actually spent quite a lot of money and got into debt when he was fighting in the Crusades. So he needed to marry a rich woman.
Indeed, and he could have chosen a richer woman.
Exactly. And he married Eleanor, the sister of the king. But the king's brother Richard wasn't too pleased about this. He wasn't at all pleased. And I think actually that King Henry III paid him off with £6,000 worth of silver.
A lot of money in those days.
A lot of money in those days, absolutely. And so they became quite friendly for a while after that. Indeed, Simon was godfather to the king's eldest son, Edward, who was also known as Longshanks. But it didn't take long for Simon and the barons in England to become disaffected, because as Mick was explaining to you, King Henry was quite autocratic and quite demanding of more and more money from the barons and the taxes. And the people got a bit fed up of this, quite rightly so. And so Simon was the founder of the Barons' Revolt. And he was a good tactician. He was good at gathering people together. And he actually was responsible for gathering them all together at a council in Oxford. And this council of barons at Oxford curbed the power of King Henry. But the barons got a bit complacent after a while and they let things slide. So what happened? Henry III got his power back again, and then the people got disaffected and the whole country was on the verge of civil war. Simon, as we've said, spent a lot of money and he ran up great debts all the time. And he really fell out of favour with the king because he promised one of the debtors that King Henry III would pay everything he owed. Well, you can imagine what Henry said when he found out about that.
No way, Jose.
Absolutely. He wasn't at all pleased. And so that was one of the times when Eleanor and Simon fled abroad to France, fearing the king's wrath. But the king, having trouble at home, needed a tactician and needed someone who was good at fighting and quelling rebellion. And so he actually brought Simon back again. So Simon and Henry had a bit of a friendly on-off relationship according to when the other needed the other to help further their cause. And so things went on like this until we had, as Mick was telling you earlier, the Battle of Lewes. And although Simon was well outnumbered, 10,000 to 5,000, because he had the tactical advantage of having fought in the Crusades, and because he knew how to place his men, he took a vantage point uphill, and so the king's men were coming uphill to fight. And after a while, they lost heart, they were losing men, and so they turned and fled to the town. But Prince Edward was in charge of the cavalry on the right flank, and he charged at Simon's men, and he thoroughly routed them. But instead of staying there to capitalise on his position, he chased off after them, and they scattered. And while he was chasing them, poor King Henry and his men were well and truly quartered by Simon. Henry was captured, and by the time Prince Edward came back to rescue his father, actually he had to surrender so that he and Simon could talk peace.
Absolutely. And what transpired afterwards was a year where Simon de Montfort was de facto ruler of the country, because he was taking King Henry around all of the barons' lands, proclaiming him to be the leader with the king under his control. Obviously, that went down quite well with some barons, but not very well with others. So it really split the country in two. And so we had the makings of a massive battle here in Evesham.
Absolutely, Nick, because I think the French king was asked to mediate, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
But he sided one king with another. And so Simon wasn't too pleased that Louis had said that Henry III should have all his powers back. And in fact, a papal decree overturned the agreement at Oxford. And so then came the Great Battle of Evesham, or as some would have it, the Massacre of Evesham.
Or the Murder of Evesham,
Or the Murder of Evesham.
as some of the contemporary scribes have put it.
Yeah.
So according to Chronicler Wicks, he said that there was 180 barons that took part in the Battle of Evesham. So if you can imagine 180 barons with all their men, that was a massive colour and melee with all the different coats of arms, etc. There was, out of that 180, 160 was on the baron side, but only 20 was on the royal side. But they'd got the advantage of having big, royal, well-structured armies who always fight together. And what they did for the first time in the Battle of Evesham was the symbol of the red cross on the white background, as we now know as St George's Cross. That was used for the first time to denote a royal army. So that was the first time anywhere in history that the red cross on a white background became the symbol of England.
Fascinating, I didn't know that.
Did you not know that?
No, we learn something new every day. And so Simon de Montfort and his men arrived in Evesham the day before the battle, August the 3rd. And they were spending the night in the abbey with King Henry.
Well, that's one account.
Oh.
Later accounts, also, which is now most historians think, is that it came over from Herefordshire at Kempsey on the Sunday, and then they travelled through to Evesham and arrived in Evesham early hours of the morning on the 4th of August.
Right.
Stopped for breakfast and prayers in the abbey, and that's where they found themselves trapped in the loop of the Avon.
Right. And the night before?
I'm not sure exactly where the night
Not
before.
sure about the night before?
Yeah.
Did Prince Edward's men go to Kenilworth?
Yes. Very true. So there was a small dispatch of men went over to Kenilworth, mainly on horseback, so they could be very quick. Now, Kenilworth Castle is where Simon de Montfort's son, also called Simon, just be confusing, was holding Kenilworth Castle. But a lot of his barons' soldiers was camped out in the outskirts of Kenilworth and not within the castle walls. So it was easy picking for a well-armed surprise attack. And they went down not really to capture or kill the men, but to capture the banners and standards, which they brought back to the Battle of Evesham and waved at the top of Green Hill, and which meant that the outlookers for Simon de Montfort's army thought that Simon's son had come with his army to join him.
Great, they would think.
They were fantastic. My son's here, we can join his armies together and we'll have a much bigger army than the royals and we'll definitely win this.
The reinforcements are here.
The cavalry's here.
The cavalry's here.
Unfortunately, it was a trick. And as Simon de Montfort set out, he realised it was a trick, but by that time it made the decision to carry on and went to try and break through Edward's ranks in a spear of horses. That didn't work very well, unfortunately, because Edward's royal armies from both sides enclosed him, and that was the end of the battle, really. So he got his head chopped off, and unfortunately the way of dishonouring people in those days was to cut your heads off the legs below the knee, the arm below the elbows, send those to your enemies as as symbols of disrespect, but also the head was chopped off and his testicles was chopped off and put over his nose and placed in his mouth, and that head was sent to the wife of Roger Mortimer, and Roger Mortimer had killed Simon de Montfort, so that was the trophy for his wife.
And how many men do we think died that day, Mick?
Well, it's reported that there were around 5,000 men lost their lives. The majority of those would have been on the Baron's side because they was completely outnumbered, outmanoeuvred by Prince Edward and his men, and basically they was sacrificed their lives for the cause of which obviously was to make sure the rule of the king wasn't all powerful and that Parliament could continue. So they was fighting for the rules of the Magna Carta, which was written just 50 years before, and the king was definitely trying to avoid those rules. So they basically gave their lives for democracy that we know we've got today.
And that's why we sometimes refer to Simon de Montfort as the father of British Parliament.
Indeed, well, you say British Parliament, but you have to think across to the sea to our American cousins. When they set up their laws, it's nearly 250 years ago, when they set up their laws, they chose 23 men of importance from history, including Moses and Bonaparte and some of the popes, etc., etc. They also chose Simon de Montfort and King Edward, who was Prince Edward, who won at the Battle of Evesham. So two of the most important 23 men that was used to form America's laws and the Constitution of America fought here at Evesham, and one of them unfortunately died, but he's now gone into history.
Which is why there is a statue of Simon de Montfort in Washington.
There is indeed, and in Capitol House there's 23 plaques on the ceiling of all the 23 men like Moses and Bonaparte, etc., along with Simon de Montfort and along with King Edward, which also gives us a good idea of what these guys used to look like, because there was no photography in them days or videos, so we rely entirely on sculptures, on plaques, on artwork and stained glass windows as the source to see what these guys actually look like in real life.
And death masks.
And death masks, of course. So the tombs and the chambers and what's within them are an incredibly important piece of history. And maybe we'll find something underneath the abbey in excavations, because
that'd be great.
That is a phenomenal thought, and that area has not really been excavated properly. Rudge did some way back in the 18th. Gentleman's archaeology, but it didn't get down and dirty into the cellars in the crypt.
Had none of this CGI that we can benefit from today.
Or LiDAR scans to see what's underneath the ground.
Exactly. Wouldn't it be amazing? Who knows? And a chance for young archaeologists to get involved.
Indeed, yes.
When we do some of our test pits and come on down and see what's happening.
Also, there's a legend of Lady Godiva. So Lady Godiva's husband was a patron of Evesham Abbey, and Leafric, yeah, sorry. And they spent a lot of money in all of the buildings that they was patrons of around the country, especially in Coventry, obviously, which is where they're most famous for. But when Leafric died in, I don't know if it was in battle or not, or just of old age, Lady Godiva became a resident of Evesham Abbey. And the rumour has it that she had a church built, and who knows, she may be buried in the crypt of that church. Nobody knows exactly where that is, but it might be in the grounds of the abbey somewhere. And her body may be entombed here, but we know that her heart was taken back to Coventry, which was the traditional way of burying somebody and then making sure that they respected the place that they loved the most, which in this case was Coventry.
And who knows whether the torso of Simon de Montfort might be buried?
Well, that's true, because it was recorded that the abbots of the abbots within the Evesham Abbey actually managed to recover the torso. Obviously, the limbs and the head had been removed, but the torso was recovered and buried in Evesham Abbey. But Henry, being as he was, decided that he didn't like the idea of a marked grave for Simon de Montfort, so he had the body taken out again and buried in secret somewhere else. Now we think it might be in the Abbey grounds, but who knows? The reason he did that, he didn't want Simon de Montfort's grave to become a place of martyrdom, and a place where people who wanted to turn him into a saint would come and come to worship him. And obviously this was very much backed by the Catholic Church, who again didn't want somebody to sort of water down their power, which is all-encompassing.
It's all about power in those days,
All
wasn't
about
it?
power and money. And Evesham being the third largest abbey in the country at the time, that was a great source of power. And it was a magnificent building, and it's such a shame that it isn't here today for us all to enjoy. But it does leave us the opportunity to go and discover things that people haven't seen for 700 or 800 years underground.
And also, with the site passing into the ownership of the trust, and ultimately the interpretive gardens being given over to the people of Evesham, it gives a chance for the general public to go and see a view of the town that no one has seen for over 300 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to see the two parish churches of All Saints and St Lawrence and the freestanding bell tower. Why do you think, Mick, that when the abbey was dissolved, why didn't they dissolve the bell tower, do you think?
Well, that was gifted to the people of Evesham by the powers that be at the time, as and I think somebody actually paid some money for that, to gift it. I can't remember the name of the guy at the minute, but that was one way of remembering the bell tower, remembering the abbey, was to retain this part of it. And also it was an important part of everyday life. You know, the bells told you the time, etc., etc. And it was the gateway into one of the important graveyards, which is no longer there. So there was lots of importance surrounding that tower. We were only really starting to understand the importance of that tower. I mean, there's a lot of people wanting to know sort of questions like, why is there flying buttresses all the way up to the top? Normally when you have that, there's another section that goes higher up. So I think that the tower itself was stopped being made. You know, at some point maybe they'll run out of money, etc.
Because it was Abbot Lichfield, wasn't it, that
It
built
was,
the tower?
Yeah, Abbot Lichfield.
And it was freestanding, it was never attached to the abbey itself.
That's correct, yes.
And the abbey spire was 3 times taller than the bell tower, so it must have been a hugely impressive sight.
Yeah, so when you come and walk close to the tower and you'll see how high it is, just carry on going up in your mind and you can see how tall the actual thing was. And of course, using augmented reality, we'll be able to bring that back to life once we've modelled the abbey up in the 3D environment. So you will be able to see that in life.
It's fascinating, your premise that those flying buttresses indicate it was never finished, and it was.
Yes.
So yeah. Maybe it was going to carry on.
Well, also the inside architecture, the inside arches also suggest that this was to strengthen up a building that was much taller than it is now.
And the 2 parish churches that we've got, All Saints, which is far more ornate and full of stained glass, and St Lawrence, historians differ as to whether St Lawrence was built so that people who were coming on pilgrimages to the town could be segregated from the parishioners, especially if they were plague-ridden or whatever.
Yes, I mean there's quite a lot of thought gone into the areas of plague, for instance. There's a low wall at the front of the abbey church grounds, which butts onto Vine Street. That is rumoured to be the plague wall. So if if one of your members had died and you wanted them to have a Christian burial, you chucked them over the plague wall. Now, whether that's true or not, it's another one of these really nice tales that is yet to be founded in fact, but it's a nice story.
It is.
And it's the same as in the St Renald's archway. The ground, you can see, is actually raised up over the years, and there's a tale of some ghost monks who walk through there, but they walk through, and as they're walking, they're at waist height because they're walking on the original floor, which is obviously not longer there. So it's these little facts and tales that is just fascinating, and we've got so much history here that's yet to be discovered, and it's for the next generation, you lot, to come along and get involved and get interested and start being inquisitive about our past and our history, and help us, this generation, actually try and nail down the facts and make it a destination for people from all over the world to come to.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? If people from all over the world could come to Evesham and see what we've got here, because we have got the Roundhouse, we've got Eob statue, we've got Battlewell up Green Hill, the site of the Battle of Evesham, and we've got the Abbey site itself, and then the Almonry Museum, where all the artefacts that the Rudge family took from the Abbey site are housed. So Evesham is going to be well and truly on the map if these young people look after it and research it.
And also, if we can enhance this story with use of the mobile technology, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, whatever reality comes next, that's for you to invent and decide and to bring it to Evesham and to amaze all us old folks with what you can do.
Absolutely. And to take better care of the heritage that you inherit. We haven't always done our best, have we, to preserve things?
No, you can say that.
So it's up to you, the next generation, to do your best and take care of this great site. Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Pleasure.